Features with opposites. Grab your C-wax. The first of the 17 is hams, air expulsion, letting the air pass through. These letters were called mahmusa because of their weakness. The flowing of air upon pronouncing them, which is due to their weak reliance on their exits. That means, why is it that the air is getting through? It's because these letters are weak, so they don't stop the air from passing through. So then hems is an attribute of weakness. Now that doesn't mean that every one of these letters is at the same level of strength or weakness. Some of these letters in themselves are stronger than others, but this attribute, generally speaking, is a weak attribute. There are 10 letters that have this attribute, all merged into the acronym فحثه شخص سكت. فحثه شخص سكت. فحثه شخص سكت. So memorize that. فحثه شخص سكت. ف ح ف ه شين خاء صاد سين kaf and da. Some of these air expulsion letters are weaker than others in this regard. The letters Sod and Kha are the strongest. Kaf and Ta also have strength. So these letters Sod and Kha, they're strong because how your tongue elevates. As we'll see as we go, the tongue elevation is an attribute of strength in letters. Sod, Kha. Kaf and Ta also have strength because they have the ability to stop the air. So if you wanted to, you could say, for example, akbar, stop the air completely instead of akbar, ek. I'm letting the air out. Akbar. Same thing for the ta. So for example, you could say at-raba instead of at-raba. So when we say air expulsion here, we're not saying all of them are just blowing all the air in the world, all of your lungs just coming out. No, they have a spectrum of strength. So master that. Master their exits and then master their attributes. You will see which of these are stronger and weaker as we go along because each letter has more than one attribute. The minimum number of attributes that any letter has is 5. A letter wouldn't have less than 5 attributes. We have a chart that we'll come to, so we'll see. Insha'Allah. The second is the letters of air suppression. Linguistically, jahr means to broadcast, to make obvious, to show outwardly, or to display. These letters were called majhura because of their strength. These letters prevent the air from escaping when pronounced. And that doesn't mean that there's not even any bit of air that gets out. These letters prevent the air from escaping when pronounced because these letters have a strong reliance on their exit. They are stronger than the air expulsion letters from this point of view, and some of them are stronger than others. They are 19 letters. Any letter that is not a Hamz letter is a Jahr letter because they are opposites. So it's the remaining letters as you see here. What's left? Hamza, Ba, Jim, Dal, Dhal, Ra, Zay, Dad, Ta, Dha, Ain, Ghain, Qaf, Lam, Mim, Nun, Waw, Ya, and Alif. So these letters, they stop the air. So you say, for example, Bas, Hamza, Bas, Bas. There's no air getting through. That's Ba, Hamza, Sin, Bas. Same thing for the bat, stops the air. So you say, for example, you could say Abwab, 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 Abwab. Look how that air stops. Abwab. Jim also, for example, Ma'an, Thadjaja, Thadjaja. You hear how that air stops? Thadjaja, Thadjaja. And Dal, Yaumid Din. The air stops. Dhal, Wadhariyat, Wadhariyat. Dhal, Wadhariyat. Ra, Ar-Rahman. So there's no air coming out. Ar-Rahman. Zay, uh, Azwaji, Azwaji. This one might confuse some people, Zay, because Zay is the sister of what? Sin and Sod. Sin releases the air. Sod releases the air. As for Zay, suppress that air. And then you will be perfecting that letter. But if you're saying that letter and pushing the air out like it's a sin or a sod, then your zay is imperfect. Like if you're saying zay, 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 suppress the air. Zay, azwaj, dad, waladdallin. You hear this air stopped. Waladdallin. But one thing you'll notice here is that the sound didn't stop. The air stopped, but the sound did not stop. Same thing for the lamb, jumping ahead here. The air stops, but the sound doesn't stop. On that lamb. So also ta, dha, ain, ghain, qaf, lam, mim, nun, waw, ya, and alif. If you have any question about those remaining letters, go ahead and ask. So even if I don't demonstrate each one for you, now you've learned the rule. Those of you who are striving to recite Quran and recite awrad throughout the day, perfect your recitation. Even if I don't now demonstrate each one of these, give you one example for each one of these, you've learned the rule. You've learned what air expulsion is. You've learned what air expulsion is, and you've learned what air suppression is, and you've learned which letters belong to which group. So then you strive, even if you're not doing it perfectly at first, you keep it in mind and you keep trying, it'll get better, inshallah ta'ala. So you're going to release your air for those air expulsion letters. You're going to suppress your air for the air suppression letters. And you're going to sit with a teacher who is good at that, like Hajj Ali, may Allah have mercy on him. Question, Lam Alif or Alif for the last letter? The name of this last letter is Lam Alif, but it's there to represent the Alif in particular, not the Lam per se. The Lam is already represented, Lam. And the first letter here, it has a Hamza on top, so that's Hamza. So we need something to represent the Alif that's an extension letter, so that's going to be Lam Alif. So I'm just going to say Alif and not Lam Alif, inshallah. So make sure, everyone, that you are paying attention to what I'm saying. The third group is the strong letters. The third group is the strong letters. These letters were called the strong letters because of the way they prevent the sound from escaping. They prevent the sound from escaping, not just the air. So let's back up real quick. Hems letters. What do? They release the air. So that means there's going to be air and there's going to be sound. But the ha is very light. You need to pay attention for that ha. Develop an ear for the Arabic so you don't miss that ha. That's why so many people say Allah without a ha, because they don't even hear the ha. Allah. So these release the air. What do the next ones do? These ones, they suppress the air. They suppress the air, prevent the air from escaping. We're not talking about whether or not they stop the sound, though. We're not talking about whether or not they stop the sound. We're just talking about if they stop the air. So the first one, that's weak because the air comes out. The second one is stronger because it stops the air from coming out. The third one is even stronger because it stops the sound altogether. And that is due to their perfect reliance on the exit when pronouncing them. There are 8 of them, the letters of Ajid Qatlim Bekat, Ajid Qatlim Bekat, Ajid Qatlim Bekat. Hamza, that's the Jim, Qaf, Hamza, Jim, Dal, Qaf, Ta, Ba, Kaf, and Ta. So each one of these stops the sound altogether. So I gave you example, Ba, Ba. I told you it stops the air, but not just that, even the sound. Ba, Jim, Thajjaja, Ma'an, Thajjaja, stops the air. Dal, Yawmiddin, I'm sorry, stops the sound. Dal, Yawmiddin, Yawmiddin, stops the sound. Qaf, so for example, ila yawmil waqtil ma'lum, waqt. If I take the qalqala off of that qaf, I'd say waqt, waqt, waqt. So it didn't only stop the air, but it stopped the sound altogether. Ta فليطوفوا فليطوفوا stops the sound altogether. Ba وفاكهة وأبا وأبا stop the air and the sound. Kaf كي نسبحك كثيرا according to a recitation. كي نسبحك كثيرا stop the sound altogether. Originally it's كي نسبحك كثيرا ونذكرك كثيرا إنك كنت بنا بصيرا. And we can recite كي نسبحك كثيرا ونذكرك كثيرا إنك كنت بنا بصيرا. And ta also فيتبعون فيتبعون فيتبعون. So those are the strong letters. الحروف الشديدة. The fourth is the trait called rikhwa, gentleness, which linguistically means softness. They were called gentle letters because of how the sound runs and flows with them when they are pronounced. That is because of their weak reliance on the exit. There are 16 of them, which are these letters here: tha, ha, kha, ذال ذاي سين شين صاد ضاد ضاء غين فاء ha, wow, ya, and alif. So look here. Rikhwa, the gentleness, is the sound still running. The sound is not canceled. So what do we find there? Dhal. So dhal stops the air because it's a jahr letter, but it doesn't stop the sound because it has rikhwa, gentleness in it. Wadhariyat, same thing for zay, stops the air because it's jahr, but it doesn't stop the sound. This is a good review for me too, mashallah. Alhamdulillah. I think if any of you are comprehending what we're going over, you know that if you don't take care of this chapter you're hearing now, you will not master this information normally. And Allah knows best. There is a middle between the strong letters and the gentle letters. The 5 letters Lam, Nun, Ain, Mim, and Ra, whose acronym is Lin Umar. Lin Umar. So these letters are medium. These 5. Lin Umar. So Ain then, that's a medium letter, not too hard, not too soft. Some people, when they say Ain, it's like, I don't know, they're choking on something. How strong is their Ain? And some people, their Ain so weak sounds like a Hamza. They might say Assalamu alaikum, Assalamu alaikum. Instead of saying ala, they might say ala. They don't say the Ain. The 5th are the letters of tongue elevation. Isti'la, kha, sad, bad, ghain, ta, qaf, and dha. These 7 letters are merged into the acronym Khussadagtin Qiyad. Khussadagtin Qiyad. Can you hear the heaviness there? Putting all those heavy letters together. Khussadagtin Qiyad. خص ضغط قض. If I say that all day, maybe I will increase the muscle mass of my tongue. These letters were called musta'liya, elevated, because the tongue raises up to the palate upon pronouncing them. Furthermore, these are the strongest letters, and letters of this quality have heaviness, tafkhim. They are called mufakhama, heavy or thick or dense letters. That's that all sound you hear. Kha, sa, ba, gha, ta, qa, va. That's the tafkhim. They all appear in the 29th verse of Surah Al-Fatih. تراهم ركعا سجدا يبتغون فضلا من الله ورضوانا سيماهم في وجوههم من أثر السجود ذلك مثلهم في التوراة ومثلهم في الإنجيل كزرع أخرج شطأه فآزره فاستوى على سوقه يعجب الزراع ليغيظ بهم الكفار وعد الله الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات منهم مغفرة وأجرا عظيما. Some of them appeared more than once, and I just didn't signal to them another time. They're also pretty spread out in this ayah, so that the fact that they all appear doesn't necessarily, the heaviness of all of that doesn't register for you because they're spread apart. They're not so close together. The sixth quality is the attribute called itbaq, sticking the tongue to the upper jaw. Its letters are 4 of the 6 elevated letters: Sad, Wad, Wa, and Va. Because these letters are so thick, there is no imala, which means that they are not lightened. Imala is a feature of, in Arabic, yani. Imala is when you take the alif and you lean it towards a ya. And there's varying degrees of that. There's not just one type of imala. And you need a teacher to sit with and practice that so you can perfect your imala. But this book of ours doesn't have much information about imala. These are the absolute strongest of the letters of sticking the tongue to the upper jaw. So these letters of isti'la are already strong and thick. These 4 out of those are the strongest, making them then the strongest of the Arabic letters. Va is the weakest of these 4, and Ta is the strongest. The 7th is the opposite of this subdivision of elevated letters, the letters of mouth expansion. Those letters were called as such because the tongue does not stick to the upper jaw upon pronouncing them. Those letters were called as such because the tongue does not stick to the upper jaw upon pronouncing them. The 8th is tongue depression, istifal, keeping the tongue down. It is contrary to tongue elevation, and therefore the rest of the letters have that attribute. There are 21 letters in this category. Here they all are, the remaining letters. Hamza, ba, ta, tha, jim, ha. So your tongue is down for all these. Hamza is a, ba, ta, tha, ja, ha, da, tha, ra, za, sa, sha, a, fa, ka, la, ma, na, ha, wa, ya, and alif. They were called low letters because the tongue goes down, because the tongue goes away from the upper jaw upon pronouncing them. Letters of this quality have lightness, tarqiq, and they are called muraqqaqah, which is the sound, So you say ba, ta, tha, ja, ha, da, that, except ra. Sometimes it's light, sometimes it's heavy. Ra, za, sa, sha, an, fa, ka, la, ma, na, ha, wa, ya. That's tarqiq. As opposed to what? Kha, sa, ba, gha, ta, ka, wa. That's tafkhim, heaviness or thickness. One must beware of making the alif after these letters of tongue depression heavy. Yani, all these letters, don't let your alif be heavy. Like, you don't say ba. Don't say like some people, Islam. Islam is the right religion. Say Islam. That's a light. That has tarqiq. Lam has tarqiq, except in the name of Allah. You say Allah in the name of God, but otherwise you give it lightness. Or for example, a woman's name, some people say Fatima, Fatima, it's fa. Open your mouth. Fatima, Fatima. So one must beware of making the alif after the letters of tongue depression heavy. If it falls after a letter of tongue elevation, the alif, it follows that letter in its heaviness. The alif will be heavy like the heavy letter that it follows because it is bound to the fatha of whatever letter is before it. Because if there were no fatha, there would be no alif. And if the alif existed, then there is a fatha. Therefore, the alif must be light with a depressed letter because they're light letters, and it must be heavy with a heavy letter. Or what is like a heavy letter, that's ra. What's like a heavy letter, that's ra, meaning the ra. One should also avoid making the hamza heavy no matter what letter is in its vicinity. So that's a notice there. Notice, alert, alert. Keep your light letters light, keep your heavy letters heavy. We're talking about the alif now. The examples I just gave you were just fatha. So we talk about alif, then we're saying if those are heavy letters, kha, sa, ba, gha, ta, qa, wa. So the alif has to follow the heaviness of that heavy letter. These are light letters, so the alif has to follow their lightness. A, ba, ta, fa, etc., including ayn. Ah, ah. Ayn is not a heavy letter. Don't say oh, ah. Wow is light. Don't say wow. Say wah. Wow. Same thing. Zay. 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 Ha. Also, some people might have some challenge with the letter ha, and it might come out heavy for some people. They might say ha. They might say Muhammad. Prophet Muhammad. Ha. Prophet Muhammad. Ha. Put an alif. Ha. Like al-haqqah, mal-haqqah. That's different from, for example, here, Sad. Allah says, was-saffat. So I think you got the picture there. The ninth attribute is being on the edge of the exit. Dhalq. Being on the edge, it's edgy. These are the edgy letters. Being on the edge of the exits. They are named as such because some of them come from the edge of the tongue and some of them come from the edge of the lip. So they have then, since they come from that edge like that, they have a certain lightness to them when you pronounce them. In my imagination, it's like being light-footed on your tippy toes. It's 6 letters, fa. So fa, now that you know this attribute, what you're going to do, look for that attribute so you can perfect it. Bring that fa from the tip of your lip, fa, or the edge of your lip. Fa. You were pronouncing a correct fa before. How hard is it to say a fa? But there's a difference when you actually are deliberately trying to hone in on an exit, deliberately trying to hone in on an attribute and then perfect it. Then you will actually, there's going to be a difference in your recitation when you do that. So do that. Fa, ra, ra. So maybe your ra, you might be making your ra a little heavier than it needs to be, but it's on the edge of the tongue. So don't make it too heavy. Ra, ra. Meme, same thing. Meme, meme. Noon, noon. Lam, and ba. They form the acronym farra min lub. Farra min lub. Farra min lub. So the fat is on the edge of the lip from the outside, the outer edge, fat. The ra is on the edge of the tongue, and the edge here does not mean the tip, not the tip, not the very tip. Fa, meme, and ba are sisters in exit from the lips, and ra, noon, and lam are all sisters from the edge of the tongue. The 10th category is the letters of samt, which linguistically means prevention. These letters are named as such because no word built from more than 3 letters would have these letters exclusively. Yani, every word that has 4 letters or 5 letters, 4 original letters or 5 original letters, if it has these letters only, doesn't have any of the edgy letters. If it has 4 or 5 original letters and none of those original letters is one of those edgy letters, it would not be originally an Arabic word, according to a saying. For this reason, the word asjad, which is a name of gold, is considered to be from another language. Since it has more than 3 letters, yani has 4 letters in this case, and does not have any of the edgy letters, fa, ra, mim, noon, lam, ba. So they judged that that's from another language, not from Arabic. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. Let's stop there.